Now, conspiracy theories and fringe beliefs aren't normally within the scope of our videos. We generally cover news, politics, and current events. But as the COVID crisis rumbles on, the influence of these theories seems to be ever increasing, and there's no conspiracy that's seeing a larger surge than the anti-vax movement. As I'm sure you know, governments around the world are currently scrambling to research vaccines that could cure COVID-19, and while progress is being made, it seems that we may still be a fair way away from a vaccine, with the possibility that a cure may never be found, as we discussed in a recent video that's linked down below. But even at this early stage, there's already people saying that they won't take the vaccine. Some don't trust vaccines as a whole, and others don't trust this vaccine specifically. In fact, this is such a widespread belief that an AP NORC poll found that only about half of Americans say that they'll take a COVID vaccine, with a fifth saying that they'll definitely refuse it, and 31% currently unsure. Things may change between now, when it's a hypothetical question, and when the vaccine becomes available, but that's a remarkably low number. And that really matters to everyone. The only way you can truly stop the spread of a virus is if enough people get immunised, preventing the virus's continued spread. And if only about half of the population sign up to get the vaccine, that simply won't happen, limiting the success of a vaccine program. So, in this video, we're going to discuss the vaccine, the general anti-vaxxer movement, and why this vaccine is especially worrying to some people. If you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel for more news updates like this one. We're closing in fast on 375,000 subscribers, and when we get there, we have a big announcement. We also have dedicated US and EU channels if they're more to your taste. Both are linked in the description below. The first thing worth noting is exactly why people have reservations about this specific vaccine. As you probably guessed, the main reservation is about the speed at which the vaccine is being created. As pressure is being put on scientists to create a vaccine by governments, citizens, and policymakers, it becomes increasingly likely that scientists will develop an entirely new kind of vaccine. Some interpret this to mean that corners will be cut with vaccine development, which could lead to the coronavirus vaccine being unsafe. In fact, of the Americans that claim they won't take the vaccine, 7/10 say that this is due to concerns about safety. This has prompted members of the scientific community to insist that despite the increasing pressure to speed up the vaccine development process, safety will not be compromised. The way that Dr. Francis Collins has put it is that the aim is to not sacrifice rigour in the process. However, it's important to ask exactly how the vaccine will be created at such a reduced timescale without sacrificing the rigour in the process. In order to do this, the standard process must be explained. Just for context, all of the following information comes from Wellcome, an independent scientific research group, and there's a link to their website in the description below. When creating a vaccine, there are usually 5 stages, which in combination normally take over 10 years to complete. The first is the discovery stage, where lab work takes place to discover how to produce immune responses to a particular disease. Then there's the preclinical phase, which generally involves animal testing, then the clinical developments, which have 3 phases including human testing, then the regulatory review, which contains all of the necessary paperwork and clearance for a vaccine, and then finally manufacturing. As I mentioned, added together, all of these stages can take in excess of 10 years to complete. In fact, Wellcome also claims that each vaccine costs on average between $200 million and $500 million. They estimate, though, that due to the speed at which the coronavirus vaccine is being developed, it could cost in excess of $3 billion. However, due to the global interest in this and the numerous different countries and organisations involved, this isn't a particularly concerning figure. So, you may be wondering exactly how the development process may be adapted to make sure that it's done quicker while maintaining the scientific rigour that Dr. Francis Collins insisted on. Well, firstly, the discovery phase has been significantly sped up, made possible by the fact that the virus's genome was sequenced incredibly quickly by the Shanghai Public Health Clinical Center, as well as the fact that many people are simultaneously working on research around the world. Then comes the second stage, that includes animal testing. This is either being reduced massively or going to be skipped entirely. However, the third stage, that focuses on the safety to humans, absolutely will not be skipped. It will be sped up though, thanks to many concurrent tests happening across the world. The longest part of the production of a vaccine will be testing whether the vaccine actually helps against the disease, and whether the immune system does produce the antibodies needed to stop the disease. But with the plans for concurrent global testing, it's predicted that this phase will still only take 8 months. Researchers from the University of Oxford have already started testing a vaccine on humans. As of the 23rd of April, 1,102 people have been lined up to take part in this trial, with one half receiving the potential vaccine and the other half receiving a meningitis vaccine. The aim is to discover if the immune system produces a good immune response, and whether there are any side effects produced. Another vaccine is also in a similar stage, being produced by Pfizer. They've tested 360 younger people, before opening the tests up to older people too. Again, the aim with these tests is to prove that the vaccine is both safe and effective, and goes to demonstrate that the human testing element of the vaccine production is not being skipped, and that safety is being taken incredibly seriously by those involved in development. The final part is the regulation and approval, which could be sped up a lot without impacting safety. Just because the regulation is handled faster doesn't necessarily affect the rigorousness of the process. As with more people and effort being put into the regulation process, the same number of man-hours can be compressed into a few months. It's also important to note that a lot of these stages will be run in parallel in order to reduce waiting time. For example, development can be run at the same time as human trials, so that if the vaccine is found to be safe, development won't take as long. With normal vaccines, this simply isn't economically viable, and each stage will be forced to take place one after another. But with the world in lockdown, and a vaccine being essential to get the world moving again, it's seen as a financial risk worth taking. So, although the time to develop a vaccine has been cut substantially, this will not be at the expense of standard procedure. Human trials will still take place, and the vaccine won't be distributed unless it's been found to be safe and effective for humans. But that still begs the question, are vaccines even normally safe? Well, although here at TLDR News, we aim to be impartial on all topics, there are some cases where presenting both sides of an argument as viable and reasonable can normalise dangerous ideas. For this reason, although we'll discuss some of the arguments made by anti-vaxxers, we'll try and demonstrate why they're flawed. The first argument that's often made by anti-vaxxers is that there's evidence of autism being linked to vaccines. This claim is based on a 1997 paper by Andrew Wakefield, who subsequently lost his license due to malpractice, was retracted from the paper he was published in, was found to have multiple ethical violations, and to top it all off, had serious procedural errors. Multiple papers have since been published that find no link between the two, and have undermined Wakefield's paper. In fact, the CDC has a web page that lists all of the known side effects for each approved vaccine, and at no point on the page is autism mentioned. In fact, I think this is a good point to discuss risks with all vaccines. It should be noted that there are most certainly risks associated with vaccines. There is an inherent danger of side effects when it comes to vaccines, but these are often minor and, as the CDC point out, go away after only a few days. Secondly, within the anti-vaxxer community, there tends to be a view that diseases contracted in a similar time to when the vaccine was administered are as a result of the vaccine itself. But as always, correlation does not equal causation. This is something that the World Health Organization tackles head-on in their rebuttal of anti-vax beliefs. They give an example of the DTP vaccine, which some have linked with sudden infant death syndrome. However, it's again a correlation-causation fallacy. This is because most infants get vaccines when they're first born, so attributing getting these vaccines with a syndrome that only affects infants doesn't seem all that fair. The WHO even goes as far as saying, you might as well say that eating bread causes car crashes, since most drivers who crash their cars could probably have been shown to have eaten bread within the past 24 hours. Another key argument from anti-vaxxers is that if a disease is already beaten, why should they expose themselves or their children to a vaccine? Well, again, the WHO shows that travellers from other countries could bring the disease with them, and it could restart the disease, moving through an unvaccinated population of a country. However, if the country had been vaccinated, such a resurgence simply wouldn't be possible. Also, there are some people in the population who can't get vaccines, whether that's due to allergies or having an immune system that doesn't provide the required response to the vaccine. Therefore, the argument is that it's the duty of people who can get the vaccine to do so, reducing the potential for spread and protecting those who can't. The WHO claim this is similar to following road traffic rules. People shouldn't just rely on other road users to keep them safe, and the same is true for vaccines. They only work if we all take part. And so, this brings us back to the statistic mentioned at the beginning of this video. There's a large portion of the US population who don't believe that the vaccine will be safe, and therefore say that they won't take it. In order for this vaccine to be successful against the disease, though, it requires a large proportion of the population to take it, as is true of all vaccines. Although this vaccine will invariably be created at a much quicker speed than other vaccines, it's not fair to say that it should be any less safe. The human trials will still take place, and it will not be distributed unless it's found to be safe. A large reason why this vaccine will be created so quickly is due to the different stages being run in parallel, which normally just wouldn't be financially viable, but in this case makes sense. It's understandable that people will be cautious about this kind of thing, and given the chaos and confusion surrounding COVID, it's easy to get worried. If vaccines were being rushed through without sufficient testing, that would of course be a major concern. But hopefully this video has highlighted how the process actually works, and why the vaccine should be as safe as any other. Do let us know your thoughts in the comments below though. Be sure to subscribe to the channel for more updates on topics like this. And a special thanks to our Patreon backers, whose support makes videos like this one possible.